Sir, they gave strangers bracelets before you even came home. The little black girl stood in the wet grass of the Vale Mansion's front lawn, crying so hard that every breath shook her shoulders, one hand gripping a cracked phone and the other pointing at the white sign planted beside Elena Vale's rose bushes. Dominic Vale had returned 2 hours early from his downtown office, still wearing his black tailored suit, black leather gloves, and silver V-signet ring. But when he saw that sign, he did not look like a man who controlled towers, hotels, and private rooms full of powerful men. He looked like a son staring at something that had insulted his mother. The sign read "For sale." Beneath the bold letters, a smaller line said "Private Emergency Showing Today." Below that sat a quick response code sealed under clear plastic, clean and official, as if the lawn itself had agreed. Behind the signpost, a digital lockbox blinked blue against the damp afternoon air. Near the iron gate, 2 strangers stood beside a black sedan, both wearing blue paper wristbands that read "Buyer Tour 4:30 in the afternoon. The woman held a glossy brochure showing the mansion's front steps. The man held a paper coffee cup and kept looking toward the gate, as if he had arrived for a luxury showing and suddenly realized he was standing inside someone else's secret. A real estate agent hovered near the walkway with a tablet pressed to his chest. A family lawyer in a navy suit held a thick folder. On the front steps, Vivian Cross watched in a cream dress, calm enough to make the scene feel colder, her white handkerchief folded neatly between her fingers. Grace Brooks appeared at the side entrance in her housekeeper apron, her face pale. "Amara," she whispered. "Come here, baby." Amara turned toward her mother, but she did not run. Her knees shook, her yellow hair tie was slipping loose, her old pink backpack hung from one shoulder. Still, she stayed between Dominic and the sign that should not have existed. "They said you would still be at work," she told him. "They said the buyers could see inside before you knew." Vivian descended one stair. "Dominic, she is frightened." She heard adult. "Business and misunderstood." Dominic lifted one gloved hand without looking at her. Vivian stopped. The lawn became quiet except for the lockbox blinking blue again and again, like a small machine trying to confess. Dominic held his palm out to Amara. Not grabbing, not ordering, only waiting. Amara looked back at Grace. Grace looked terrified, but she nodded once, as if truth was the only thing left they could afford. Amara placed the cracked phone in Dominic's hand. A private listing was already open on the screen. Dominic scanned the quick response code on the sign anyway. The same page appeared. "Vale Estate. Seller approved same-day access. Buyer tour window confirmed. Digital lockbox active. 24 photographs available." Dominic's thumb moved across the screen. The first photograph showed the front of the mansion. The second showed the marble foyer. The third showed the West Wing sitting room, a room sealed since Elena Vale's funeral. A room no buyer, agent, lawyer, photographer, or fiancé had permission to enter. In the corner of that photograph, reflected in an antique mirror, something blue sat near Elena's old writing desk. Dominic did not know yet what it meant, but he knew that room should have been dark, closed, and untouched. Vivian's heel clicked once on the stone step. "Dominic, the listing protocol can be explained." He turned the phone slightly so she could see the West Wing photograph. For the first time, her soft face tightened at the edge of her mouth. The lawyer opened his lips, ready to wrap the moment in procedure, but Dominic spoke first. "No one leaves the lawn. No one removes that sign. If this is legal, it can survive being looked at. No one resets the lockbox. No one deletes the listing. No one touches a camera, a folder, a tablet, or this phone." The agent swallowed. The buyers stared down at their wristbands as if the paper had become evidence around their wrists. Dominic looked at the wet soil around the signpost, then at the roses his mother had planted, then at Vivian standing on the steps of the house she had already started calling an asset. His voice dropped low enough that everyone leaned in without meaning to. "Who approved access to my mother's home?" Vivian let Dominic's question hang over the rose lawn for one breath too long, and in that silence the buyers near the gate began to understand that their blue wristbands were not invitations anymore. They were evidence. The real estate agent shifted his tablet against his chest. The family lawyer tightened his grip on the folder. Grace Brooks stood frozen at the side entrance, one hand on the doorframe, as if stepping fully onto the lawn might make every accusation find her faster. Vivian descended the last stair with the white handkerchief still folded in her hand, her voice soft enough to sound protective. "Dominic, no one approved anything behind your back. This is an emergency review of an asset," and the child heard pieces she could not understand. Amara's face tightened at the word child. She did not argue. She only held her old pink backpack strap with both hands and looked down at the wet grass around her shoes. Vivian turned toward her with a careful smile. "Sweetheart, you saw a sign. You saw visitors. You heard words like buyer and showing. That would frighten anyone your age." Grace stepped forward quickly. "Miss Cross, she did not mean trouble. She was scared." The apology came before anyone had asked for one, and Dominic heard the habit inside it. Grace was not defending herself. She was trying to make herself smaller before the room chose her as the problem. The lawyer opened his folder and slid a clipped packet into view. "Mr. Vale, the situation is being distorted by emotion. Under the Emergency Asset Protection Protocol, a preliminary private showing may be arranged when there is concern about staff-controlled access points and estate exposure." Dominic did not take the packet. Carlo took it from the lawyer and held it open beside him. The first page was clean, expensive, and cold. Emergency Asset Protection Protocol. Beneath it, a subsection read Staff-Controlled Access Risk. A printed map of the mansion marked the side entrance, the laundry corridor, the service stairs, and the back passage near the west wing with small red circles. No one said Grace's name, but the map did it for them. Amara looked at the circles, then at her mother's apron, then back at the ground. The real estate agent tried to smile. "For an estate over 18,000 square feet, this is a standard protective measure. We prevent rumors, protect value, and keep the process discreet." Dominic turned his head slowly. "Value," the agent swallowed. Vivian answered for him. "Property value, Dominic. Asset value. Your interests. I was trying to keep the matter clean before it became public." Dominic looked past her at the mansion windows, especially the dark west wing above the lawn. His mother had never called it property. She had called it the room where silence should be respected. Vivian had called it an asset twice in less than a minute. The lawyer continued, smoother now. "There is also an employee access irregularity under review. No accusation is being made at this moment." At this moment landed exactly where it was meant to land, close enough to Grace to make her flinch. Amara lifted the cracked phone again, not to defend herself, but because the private listing was still open and something inside the pictures was bothering her more than the adults. Dominic saw her staring. "What is it?" Vivian moved first. "Dominic, please. She should not be asked to interpret estate materials." "I asked what she sees," Dominic said. Amara swallowed and touched the third photograph. "That room is not for pictures." The lawyer sighed lightly, as if patience had become a professional expense. "Children often attach meaning to rooms they are told not to enter." Amara did not look at him. She pinched the screen wider. The photograph showed the West Wing sitting room, pale furniture under covers, Elena Vale's antique mirror, the edge of a writing desk, and a narrow blue shape caught in the reflection. "Something is there," Amara whispered. "Something blue. And there is tape on the floor." The photographer, standing near his equipment case at the edge of the walkway, moved 1 foot backward. The movement was tiny, but Dominic noticed. Vivian smiled again, softer and colder. "Old photographs can show anything. Reflections, storage carts, maintenance markings. She is frightened and trying to make sense of it." Grace's voice came thin from the side door. "The West Wing has been locked since Miss Elena passed." The lawn went still around those words. Dominic took the cracked phone from Amara, again carefully, as if the broken glass deserved more respect than the legal packet. He looked at the photograph, then at the map with the red circles, then at Grace standing outside the main conversation like a woman already half erased. "A house becomes an asset on paper," he said. It becomes a home when someone inside it is not afraid to tell the truth. Vivian's handkerchief tightened between her fingers. The lawyer closed one page and opened another. Mr. Vale, I strongly recommend discussing this privately. Dominic looked at Amara. Show me the blue reflection. Amara raised one small finger to the screen, and everyone on the lawn watched as the detail no adult wanted enlarged began to open. Amara's small finger moved across the cracked screen, and the blue shape in the mirror grew large enough for the truth to begin taking a shape of its own. No one on the lawn spoke. The buyers near the gate stood still with their wristbands exposed. The agent held his tablet against his chest like a man afraid the device might speak before he did. In the reflection of Elena Vale's antique mirror, behind the pale-covered chair and near the edge of the old writing desk, stood a blue laundry cart. Its handle was wrapped in gray tape, uneven and worn from use. On the lower metal frame, close to the front wheel, a small sunflower sticker leaned crookedly to one side. Grace made a sound so quiet it almost disappeared under the wind. That is my cart, she said. Vivian turned toward her immediately, soft but quick. Laundry carts move, Grace. Staff equipment gets used in large homes all the time. Amara shook her head before her mother could apologize. Not that one. Her voice trembled, but the detail steadied it. The left wheel squeaks. I put the sunflower there because Mom said it sounded sad. The words were too small to be a strategy, too specific to be guessed, and Dominic felt the adults on the lawn lose a little ground to one child's memory. He looked from the crooked sticker to Grace's hands, then back to the photograph. When was this image uploaded? The agent glanced at the lawyer, and that glance told Dominic more than the first answer would have. It may be an old insurance archive, the agent said. Large estates keep extensive visual records. Dominic's eyes did not move. That was not my question. Amara pointed again, this time lower in the picture. A strip of blue floor marker tape sat on the polished floor beside a covered chair, bright and straight, the kind of tape used to mark where a tripod should stand. Dominic looked toward the photographer's equipment case near the walkway. Around the handle was a roll of the same blue tape. The photographer looked down too late. Vivian gave a quiet sigh. Dominic, a child is comparing a private listing to things she thinks she remembers. Amara looked at the photograph, not at Vivian. I remember because Mom says the West Wing is not a place for carts. She says Miss Elena's room is a quiet room. Grace closed her eyes. She had tried to teach her daughter respect for rooms they were never invited into, and now that respect had become the only reason anyone knew the room had been violated. Dominic handed the phone back to Amara with care, then turned to Carlo. Photograph the sign exactly where it stands. Photograph the wet soil. Photograph the quick response code. Photograph the lockbox serial number. Photograph the buyer wristbands. Preserve the listing page. No edits, no deletions, no replacement. The family lawyer stepped forward. Mr. Vale, preservation language could escalate a misunderstanding. Dominic did not raise his voice. Someone used a sealed room in my mother's home to sell a house I did not approve for sale. Escalation began before I arrived. Carlo moved at once, taking pictures from every angle. The agent unlocked his tablet under Dominic's stare and opened the listing dashboard. The page loaded slowly, each spinning second making the lawn feel tighter. Vivian kept her face smooth, but the white handkerchief folded deeper into her palm. At last, the image record appeared. West Wing sitting room. Uploaded today at 2:31 in the afternoon. Not last year. Not an archive. Today, while Dominic was downtown, while the buyer tour was being prepared, while Grace was assigned to the laundry corridor on the opposite side of the mansion. Grace whispered, I was folding tablecloths then. Amara nodded quickly. I was doing homework by the counter. Mom told me not to erase too hard because the pencil was almost gone. No one smiled. The detail was ordinary and that made it heavy. Dominic looked again at the cart, the sunflower sticker, the blue tape, the upload time, and the dark windows of the West Wing above them. Vivian tried one more time, her voice almost tender. Staff errors happen in houses this complicated. Dominic turned toward her. Staff errors: do not upload photographs at 2:31. The wind lifted the glossy brochure in the buyer's hand, showing the same West Wing room printed clean and bright for strangers. Dominic looked toward the mansion doors. "Bring me Elena's key box," he said. Closed, untouched, in front of everyone. Vivian's smile stayed in place, but something behind it stopped moving. Somewhere inside the mansion, in a walnut box that had not been opened since a funeral, an empty groove was waiting to answer. Carlo returned from the inner hall carrying Elena Vale's walnut key box with both hands, and the way he held it made the mansion feel less like a home and more like a witness being brought into the room. Dominic did not allow the box to be opened on the lawn. He led Vivian Cross, the family lawyer, the real estate agent, Grace Brooks, Amara, Carlo, and the estate security witness into the small receiving room beside the West Wing corridor, where tall windows still looked out at the white for sale sign standing in the wet grass. The buyers stayed near the gate under watch, their blue wristbands already photographed. The agent stood near the doorway with his tablet pressed flat against his stomach. The lawyer held his folder close to his ribs. Vivian remained beside Dominic in her cream dress, calm on the surface, but the white handkerchief in her fingers had become a tight little knot. Grace stood behind Amara with one hand resting on her daughter's shoulder, as if touch alone could keep the room from turning the child's truth into punishment. Dominic placed the key box on the center table. The box was dark walnut, polished by years of careful hands, with brass corners worn soft and Elena's initials carved near the lock. Dominic removed one black glove, set it beside the box, and opened the lid. Inside, every key rested in its own velvet groove beneath a cream label written in Elena Vale's handwriting. Garden gate, library archive, east pantry, chapel door, West Wing private room.
17.
The groove marked V17 was empty. No key. Not even. Only a pale shape pressed into the velvet where metal had rested long enough to leave a ghost behind. Grace took in a sharp breath. Amara looked from the empty groove to the West Wing door, then to Vivian's face. Vivian stepped forward softly, as if she had been waiting for the empty space to accuse the person with the least power. "Dominic, Grace found that key in the laundry room earlier," she said. "She was frightened and brought it to me. I planned to return it after the emergency review." Grace shook her head at once. "No, Miss Cross. I never found it. I never touched that box." The lawyer raised one careful hand. "Stress can affect memory. No one is making a final accusation at this moment." At this moment landed exactly where it was meant to land, close enough to Grace to make her flinch. Amara's fingers curled around the strap of her old pink backpack. She spoke before her mother could apologize again. "My mom checks every pocket before laundry," she said. "Every pocket. Gum wrappers, coins, receipts, folded notes, everything. She says poor people cannot afford to be careless in rich houses." No adult had a clean answer for that. Dominic looked at Grace's worn hands, then back at the empty groove. He knew Elena too well to believe she had left only a missing key behind. Slowly, he lifted the velvet lining at one corner. Beneath it lay a folded piece of yellowed paper, thin and flat, hidden where only someone who knew Elena's habits would look. Dominic unfolded it. Elena's handwriting appeared, steady and quiet. "If V17 moves, check who profits." The receiving room seemed to lose air. Vivian gave a soft, controlled breath. Elena was cautious about many things. That note could mean old family disputes. Dominic placed the note beside the empty groove. "Then records will tell us whether it is old." He turned to the agent. "Open the digital lockbox activity." The agent glanced toward the lawyer. Dominic's voice dropped. "Do not look at him. Look at the tablet." The agent unlocked the device, and the activity page loaded in silence. Lockbox profile created. 2:18 in the afternoon. Secondary estate account. Vivian Cross. Device location. Vale Mansion internal network.
Carlo Lind Closer.
That is from inside the house. The agent swallowed. Digital accounts can be compromised. Dominic did not look away from Vivian. A sealed key, a buyer bracelet, and a lockbox do not all appear by accident. Vivian's expression stayed gentle, but the edges had gone cold. Dominic, you are letting a frightened child turn an asset protection process into suspicion. Dominic closed the key box, leaving Elena's note on top where everyone could see it. Seal the box. Preserve the lockbox exactly as it stands. No one resets anything. No one edits the listing. No one questions Grace or Amara without outside counsel present. The lawyer's jaw tightened. That is unnecessary. Dominic turned to him. It became necessary when the paper began walking toward the weakest person in the house. At the end of the corridor, the west wing door waited under its dark frame. Carlo arrived with master access, and the estate security witness raised a phone to record. Vivian glanced at the door for less than a second, but Dominic saw the first true crack in her calm. Then he gave the order. Open the west wing. The west wing opened with a soft electronic chime, and the quiet sound made the corridor feel colder than any locked door should. Carlo stood to one side with the master access card raised where the estate security witness could see it, while the witness recorded from 2 steps behind Dominic. No one crossed the threshold until Dominic spoke. Photograph everything before anyone touches anything. The room beyond the door smelled of closed curtains, old paper, lemon polish, and silence. Elena Vale's private sitting room looked almost untouched at first. White covers rested over the chairs. The piano was closed. The framed photographs on the mantel remained in their careful line, facing a room no guests were supposed to enter. Nothing expensive was missing, and that made the things that did not belong look even more deliberate. Near the antique mirror, a strip of blue floor marker tape sat on the dark wood floor, straight and bright, like a temporary wound. Beside Elena's writing desk stood Grace's blue laundry cart, the gray taped handle turned toward the room, the crooked sunflower sticker near the wheel catching the light. Grace's hand tightened on Amara's shoulder. I left that cart by the folding table this morning, she whispered. Amara nodded quickly. It was there when I did my homework. Vivian kept her eyes away from the cart for 1 second too long, then said, large homes require movement of staff equipment during reviews. It may have been relocated for assessment. Dominic looked at the blue tape, then at the cart, then at the mirror that had accidentally told the truth. Someone keeps using careful words for careless trespass. Carlo photographed the cart, the tape, the mirror, the floor, the doorway, and the desk. Then the estate security witness pointed to a cream envelope placed exactly in the center of Elena's writing surface. It was too clean for a room that had been closed for months, too square against the quiet wood, too prepared. Printed across the front were the words staff breach file. Grace took 1 small step backward. She did not know what was inside, but she knew the shape of blame when rich people put it in an envelope. The family lawyer moved forward with his professional calm restored. Mr. Vale, internal documents can be sensitive. That file should be reviewed privately and with appropriate context. Dominic did not touch it. Then we will create context in front of the people it is being used to accuse. Carlo put on gloves and opened the envelope flat on the desk. Inside was an unsigned statement claiming Grace Brooks accepted payment to move her laundry cart into the West Wing, allowed a photographer to capture interior images, and exposed an estate access code for emergency buyer entry. Behind it was a photocopy of Grace's employee badge, crooked on the page, cut too close near her name, as if someone had scanned it quickly from a personnel file and trusted that no one would care about a housekeeper's details. Grace shook her head. I did not take money. I did not bring anyone here. I did not open this room. Her voice was quiet, not weak, but trained by years of knowing that loud truth could still be punished. Amara stared at the paper. Her fear changed into concentration. She pointed near the lower corner without touching it. There is orange on the edge. Carlo angled the page toward the light. A yellow-orange smear marked the paper beside a staple dent. Amara leaned closer, then stopped herself. It smells like the marker Miss Vivian uses on the dinner menus. The one that smells like oranges. Vivian gave a small patient smile. Many people use highlighters, Amara. Dominic did not answer her. His eyes moved to the bottom edge of the statement. The printer code. Carlo read it aloud from the faint gray line. The file had been printed from the second-floor office printer outside the family lawyer's temporary workspace. Then Dominic looked at the fold marks. They matched the width and pressure of the folder the lawyer had carried from the lawn. The agent looked down. The photographer stared at the blue floor tape as if color itself had betrayed him. Dominic placed the open file in the center of the desk. "This was not discovered," he said. "This was prepared." The lawyer's jaw tightened, but he had another answer ready. "The file is only one concern. The security footage is the greater issue." Grace went still. Amara felt her mother's fingers turn cold on her shoulder. Vivian lowered her eyes, almost sorrowful, almost relieved. "What footage?" Dominic asked. The lawyer opened a tablet and set it beside the staff breach file. A black and white frame appeared. The hallway outside the West Wing at 12:13 after midnight. In the frozen image, a figure stood near the sealed door wearing Grace's dark work coat. The black and white image on the tablet made Grace Brooks look guilty before anyone had let her speak, and that was the coldest part. The hallway outside the West Wing appeared in pale gray light, the stone floor shining under the security camera, the sealed door waiting at the end like a question already answered by someone else. On the screen, the figure in Grace's dark work coat stood with the collar lifted and one hand close to the lock. The family lawyer tapped play. The figure crossed the hallway, head lowered, steps quiet and even, then lifted something small toward the door before the lock released. The clip stopped with the door just beginning to open. "This is why the Emergency Asset Protection Protocol was activated," the lawyer said. Staff access had clearly been compromised. Grace shook her head, but no words came out at first. The coat was hers. The hallway was real. The timestamp read 12:13 after midnight. Every piece looked arranged to leave her with no clean place to stand. Vivian Cross lowered her eyes, sorrowful from a distance, as if the footage hurt her too. The real estate agent looked relieved, because the video moved attention away from the listing, the lockbox, the buyer wristbands, and the fresh sign still standing on Elena Vale's lawn. Amara stepped closer to the tablet. She did not look at the coat. She looked at the shoes. "Play it again," she said softly. The lawyer frowned. "This is not a matter for a child." Dominic did not move. "Play it again." The lawyer hesitated, then replayed the clip. The figure walked from left to right across the stone hallway. Amara tilted her head, listening to a memory instead of watching a case. "That walk's too clean to be my mom," she said. The room stayed silent. She pointed at the moving feet. "After dinner shifts, Mom drags her left foot a little. Not because she wants to, because it hurts. On the stone it goes scrape, step, scrape, step. That person does not scrape." Grace looked down at her own shoes. The outside edge of her left sole was worn thin. Dominic saw it, and the coat stopped being the only thing in the frame. "Slow it down," he said. Carlo took the tablet from the lawyer and moved through the footage one frame at a time. The figure reached the door. The sleeve shifted. For less than 1 second, a wrist caught the hallway light. A narrow pearl bracelet appeared, with one darker bead near the clasp. Vivian's hand moved toward her own wrist and stopped too late. Amara saw it, but she did not accuse anyone. She only whispered, "Miss Vivian has one with a dark little pearl." Vivian gave a small laugh that did not warm the room. "Pearls are common, Dominic." Dominic answered without looking away from the screen. "So are coats." The estate security witness leaned closer to the timecode. "There is a jump." Carlo replayed the last seconds before the door opened. The numbers moved from 12:13 and 9 seconds to 12:13 and 26 seconds. 17 seconds had vanished. Not blurred. Not dark. Gone. The lawyer said, "Older camera systems can glitch." The witness shook his head. "This system does not skip like that unless the file was exported, altered, or damaged after export." Dominic turned to Grace. "With your permission, Carlo will check the coat." Grace nodded quickly, almost startled to be asked before her belongings were searched. Carlo brought the coat from the service hook where Grace said she had left it the night before. He checked each pocket in front of the security witness. From the inner lining, he removed a folded white receipt, sharply creased and too clean to belong to laundry. Across the top were the words Maribel House Document Services. Beneath that were 3 lines: private room, notary preparation, escrow packet review. Pickup time, 7:42 in the morning. On the back, written in yellow-orange ink, was a service code and the number 17. Amara looked from the receipt to the missing time on the video. "That is the part they took out," she whispered. The lawyer's face lost its smoothness. Vivian looked toward the window, where the for sale sign still leaned over Elena Vale's rose lawn. Dominic placed the receipt beside the staff breach file, and the evidence finally changed direction. It no longer pointed at Grace. It pointed through her toward whoever needed her blamed. His face went pale, not from fear, but from understanding. Someone had built a story where the poorest woman in the house would look guilty before she ever got a real chance to speak. "This is not evidence against Grace," he said. "This is evidence of construction." Then he looked at the receipt again. "If there is an escrow packet, we find it before morning." Dominic did not accuse Vivian Cross in the West Wing, and that quiet choice made the room colder than anger would have. He looked at the Maribel House receipt, the altered hallway footage, the pearl bracelet on Vivian's wrist, the staff breach file on Elena's desk, Grace's blue laundry cart near the mirror, and the empty groove where V17 should have rested. Then he gave the room the answer it expected least. "This will be settled tonight," he said. "In the grand living room with the family council present." The family lawyer recovered first, because polished men like him always tried to turn danger into procedure. "That is wise, Mr. Vale. A formal clarification can protect the estate from further misunderstanding." Vivian's shoulders relaxed by less than an inch. Dominic saw it. Grace saw something different. She saw another elegant room, another long table, another place where people with titles would speak before she was allowed to breathe. Amara pressed closer to her mother, still holding the cracked phone like the only small shield she had. Dominic turned to Carlo. "Take Miss Brooks and Amara to the library. They stay together. No one separates them. No family lawyer speaks to them. The independent attorney meets them first." Vivian stepped forward with careful concern. "Dominic, you are making this larger than it needs to be." His eyes moved to the receipt sealed inside Carlo's clear evidence sleeve. "It became large when someone built a sale around my mother's house and a crime around Grace's name. In the library, Grace sat on the edge of a leather chair as if the furniture might decide she did not belong there. Amara opened her old pink backpack and took out a dull pencil, a folded homework sheet, and an eraser worn down to one gray corner. Helen Price arrived minutes later, an independent estate attorney with silver glasses and a voice that did not sound owned by the mansion. She placed a clean legal pad in front of Amara. "You do not have to answer questions," Helen said gently. "You may draw anything you remember." Amara nodded and began with the lawn. She drew the for sale sign, the quick response code as a crooked little square, the blue buyer wristbands, the blinking lockbox, the black sedan near the hedge, the blue bird sticker on its rear window, the first 3 letters of the license plate, the blue laundry cart, the sunflower sticker, the blue floor tape, and a tiny circle around a wrist with pearls. Grace watched her daughter turn fear into a map, and her eyes filled because Amara had been forced to remember too much. Down the hall, Dominic used a different kind of power than the one people whispered about. He did not call anyone to frighten or threaten. He called people whose work could survive inside official records. He called Helen Price. He called a handwriting expert from Boston. He called a camera technician who knew the Vale security system. He called Ruth Bell, a financial investigator who traced trusts and shell companies through documents instead of rumors. He called an escrow compliance officer who could stop a packet before it reached the county recorder. "No assumptions," Dominic told each of them. "Records only." By 8 o'clock, the records began to answer. The digital lockbox profile had been created at 2:18 in the afternoon from Vivian Cross's secondary estate account on a device connected inside the mansion. The West Wing photograph had been uploaded at 2:31. The buyer tour had been scheduled for 4:30. The escrow packet had not yet been submitted, but it was queued for electronic delivery to the county recorder at 8 o'clock the next morning. The camera technician confirmed the missing 17 seconds were not a normal system skip. A backup storage node showed the hallway video had been exported, altered, and reloaded. The Maribel House appointment matched a private document room reserved that morning, not under Grace Brooks's name. Then the handwriting expert delivered the finding that made Dominic stop moving. His approval signature had not been freshly signed. It had been scanned from a St. Agnes Hospital thank you letter he wrote after Elena Vale's final charitable donation. His mother's last kindness had been turned into permission for theft. Dominic stood with one hand on the desk, staring at the child's drawing beside Elena's note. Then Ruth Bell called, and her voice made the house feel even colder. The buyer is St. Verona Trust, created 11 days ago. It is presented as independent, but the beneficiary trail leads to an office used by Aldo Vale. Carlo looked toward the grand living room doors. Aldo Vale was not a stranger. He was a family elder, a man who spoke about loyalty at every dinner and expected silence in return. Dominic folded Elena's note once and placed it beside Amara's drawing. If V17 moves, check who profits. At last, the warning had a name. They dressed theft as procedure, Dominic said. We will answer it with procedure. Down the hall, the chandeliers in the grand living room came on one by one, and Vivian Cross walked toward the signing table still believing the pen was waiting for him. The grand living room looked ready for a ceremony, and that made the lie feel even colder. The walnut table had been polished until the chandelier lights floated across it like still water. At Dominic Vale's seat, a silver pen rested on a black leather folder, placed exactly where Vivian Cross wanted his hand to go. Vivian stood beside the table in her cream dress, her face smooth again, her pearl bracelet turned so the darker bead faced inward against her wrist. The family lawyer had stacked the documents in a perfect line. The real estate agent held his tablet as if it had only ever been a business tool and not the doorway through which strangers had nearly entered Elena Vale's home. Aldo Vale sat near the fireplace, gray-haired and silent, a family elder who made loyalty sound like a debt nobody could ever finish paying. Helen Price stood near the escrow compliance officer with her folder held flat against her side. Grace Brooks and Amara entered through the main doorway, not the service hall, and that small difference changed the air before anyone spoke. Several staff members looked up. Grace noticed, then lowered her eyes by habit. Amara held the cracked phone in both hands, and her folded drawing rested against her chest like a paper shield. Vivian gave Dominic a soft smile. We can end this with dignity, she said. Sign the clarification, pause the misunderstanding, and protect the estate from embarrassment. She slid the pen closer. Everyone here knows you are still in control. Dominic looked at the pen, but he did not touch it. Instead, he placed Amara's cracked phone beside it. The broken screen caught the chandelier light in thin white lines. Then he placed Elena Vale's folded note beside the phone. If V17 moves, check who profits. Aldo's eyes narrowed by less than an inch, but Dominic saw it. On the record, Dominic said. Helen opened her folder. The first image appeared on the wall screen. The white for sale sign on the rose lawn, the wet soil around its legs, the quick response code under plastic, and the digital lockbox blinking blue. Next came the buyer wristband log, showing the 4:30 tour scheduled before Dominic returned home. Then the private listing appeared with the word seller approved same-day access. Vivian folded her hands. Those documents show procedure, not fraud. Helen changed the slide. The West Wing photograph filled the wall. The room saw Elena's antique mirror, the blue laundry cart, the gray tape on the handle, the crooked sunflower sticker, and the blue floor marker tape on the polished wood. Uploaded today at 2:31 in the afternoon, Helen said. Not an archive. The real estate agent's mouth opened, then closed. The next record appeared. Lockbox profile created at 2:18 in the afternoon. Secondary estate account, Vivian Cross. Device connected to the Vale Mansion internal network. The room seemed to tighten around her name. Then came Elena's walnut keybox with the empty groove marked V17, Elena's warning note, and the staff breach file with Grace's crooked badge scan. The unsigned statement, the orange smear, the second floor printer code, and fold marks matching the family. Lawyer's folder. Dominic looked at the staff first, then at the family. Grace Brooks was not named because there was proof, he said. She was shaped into an answer before the question was asked. The lawyer stepped forward. Mr. Vale, that interpretation is inflammatory. Helen changed the slide again. The midnight hallway footage played. The figure in Grace's coat walked too cleanly across the stone floor. The frame froze on the wrist, where the pearl bracelet flashed with one darker bead. Then the time code jumped, losing 17 seconds. The backup storage report appeared beneath it. Exported, altered, reloaded. Vivian's face stayed beautiful, but beauty could not repair missing time. The next slide showed the Maribel House Document Services receipt. Private room, notary preparation, escrow packet review, 7:42 in the morning, with the yellow-orange code on the back. Then came the handwriting report. Dominic's approval signature had been scanned from the St. Agnes Hospital thank you letter he wrote after Elena's final charitable donation. Aldo shifted in his chair when the final page appeared. St. Verona Trust, created 11 days ago, buyer of record, beneficiary trail connected to Aldo Vale's office. Aldo's voice came low. This is family business. Dominic turned to him.
No.
Family business ended when Grace Brooks was chosen as a disposable name. Vivian's gentleness finally sharpened. Or Grace used her daughter's tears, a broken phone, and a child's drawing to force her way into protection. Amara looked down at her shoes. Grace went pale. Dominic looked at the folded drawing in Amara's hands, then back at Vivian. A child does not understand estate law, he said. But she understands when adults build a lie around her mother. He turned to the escrow compliance officer. Lock the packet before submission. Notify the county recorder that authorization is disputed and evidence is preserved. Remove buyer access. Seal the agent's tablet. Suspend Vivian Cross and Aldo Vale from all estate systems pending independent review. Then Dominic looked at Helen Price. Read Grace Brooks into the record. Here. In front of everyone who was expected to doubt her. Helen Price opened the clean folder, and the grand living room became so quiet that even the chandelier seemed to hold its breath. She did not look at Vivian for permission. She did not look at Aldo for approval. She read like a woman placing truth where power could not move it. Grace Brooks is hereby identified as a targeted employee, not an accused party. The badge copy used in the staff breach file was taken from a personnel record without verified consent. The unsigned statement contains no lawful interview, no witness confirmation, and no independent review. The laundry cart, the coat, the corridor map, and the staff access language were used to create a false trail. Grace's hand rose to her mouth, but this time she was not trying to stop herself from defending her name. She was trying to understand what it felt like to hear that name protected out loud. Amara stood beside her, holding the cracked phone against her chest, her yellow hair tie loose from the long evening. Helen placed another page on the table. The approval signature attributed to Dominic Vale is invalid. It was copied from a St. Agnes Hospital thank you letter connected to Elena Vale's final charitable donation. The escrow packet has been locked before electronic submission to the county recorder. Buyer access has been removed. The private listing is offline. The digital lockbox is sealed, not reset. The quick response code, buyer wristband log, upload metadata, altered footage, Maribel House receipt, and St. Verona Trust records are preserved. The real estate agent lowered his head. The family lawyer stared at the table as if the polished wood had become safer than anyone's eyes. Vivian Cross stood perfectly still, but her pearl bracelet no longer looked elegant. It looked remembered. Aldo Vale said nothing, and for the first time, his silence did not make the room smaller. Dominic turned to the escrow compliance officer. Confirm it. She checked her tablet and nodded. The packet is locked. No submission will reach the county recorder tomorrow morning. A dispute notice and preservation hold are active. Ruth Bell stepped forward with her report. The St. Verona Trust file will go to the Financial Crimes Unit tonight. Helen continued, calm and exact. Counsel conduct will be reported to the State Bar. The real estate agent and brokerage will be reported to the licensing board. Estate access for Vivian Cross is cancelled. Aldo Vale's counsel authority is suspended pending independent review. None of it sounded like revenge. It sounded like doors closing before a lie could escape. Dominic picked up the staff breach file and placed it flat in front of Grace. He did not ask her to touch it. Helen pressed a red stamp across the front page. Void. The word covered the false statement, the crooked badge scan, and the name that had almost been turned into a trap. Dominic looked at Grace in front of the staff, the family, and every person who had watched her stand near side doors for years. They tried to make your name the lock that hid their crime, he said. Tonight, your name becomes part of the record that stopped it. Grace's shoulders trembled once, but she did not fold. She stood taller. Thank you, Mr. Vale, she whispered. Dominic shook his head. No. This house owes you more than thanks. Before midnight, Helen drafted the correction to Grace's employment record. Grace would receive a written public apology, full benefits, paid leave, independent legal representation paid by the estate but not controlled by the family, and a formal role in reviewing service wing procedures so no employee could be accused through family paperwork alone. Every future complaint involving staff would require outside review. No child in the house could be questioned by family lawyers without an independent advocate present. A safe reporting line would bypass the Vale family chain entirely. Amara listened carefully. So nobody can make Mom sign scary papers? Dominic lowered himself to one knee so she did not have to look up at Power to hear the truth. Nobody. And you are finished carrying fear that belonged to adults. Later, they returned to the front lawn. Carlo removed the for sale sign from the wet grass and placed the quick response code panel into an evidence sleeve. The digital lockbox came off without being reset. The blue buyer wristbands were sealed in a clear bag. Carlo brought V17 from a sealed evidence pouch recovered with Vivian's estate materials, and Dominic returned the key to its empty groove inside Elena's walnut box. For a moment, his fingers stayed on the key, as if he were apologizing to his mother without words. Then Amara noticed a rose cutting bent near the hole where the sign had stood. Its stem was bruised, but one small leaf was still green. Can we try to save it? She asked. It got bent because of the sign. Dominic removed his other glove. Grace knelt first, then Amara, then Dominic beside them in the damp grass. Carlo brought water in a silver pitcher from the kitchen, and together they pressed the small cutting into the ground where the sale sign had tried to claim the lawn. When they walked back to the mansion, Dominic did not lead Grace and Amara to the side entrance. He opened the front door. Grace hesitated out of habit. Amara looked up at her mother, then stepped through with her. The house was still stone, glass, old money, and locked rooms. But the silence inside had changed. The smallest voice on the lawn had been believed. The weakest name in the file had been restored, and Elena Vale's home had been saved by a truth someone powerful finally chose to hear.